By 2030, 60% of the world's population is expected to be living in urban areas. The major shift from rural areas to cities will happen in countries that are still developing, in continents like Africa, Asia and South America. Earlier, I spoke with Maimunah Mohd Sharif, the Executive Director of UN Habitat, about the challenges for governments and for the environment. Madam Maimunah, thanks so much for joining us. The United Nations has designated the first Monday of October every year as World Habitat Day. What can you tell us about the state of towns and cities around the world and the challenge that you face right now?
I think now more than 68% of the population live in the cities, live in the urban areas. So that's how important it is to us as given by mandate by the United Nations to link with cities, and one thing is to make our cities right. So that is very important when we celebrate the World Habitat Day in looking into how the cities being function and how we manage the cities and how we plan the cities, and also at the same time is putting up the best practices, sharing the best practices and sharing also the challenges, not only the best practices, challenges among the cities.
So the United Nations can initiate ideas, can launch plans, but to what extent does all this depend on local authorities and regional governments? To what extent are they empowered to implement these plans that you have?
I think you touched the topic very rightly, because I was a former mayor in Penang, Malaysia for 7 years before I came to as an ED of UN Habitat. I think that is in order to look to get our urbanization and to see the growth and sustainable development, we have to look in terms of vertical and also horizontal integration. And while we're talking about local government, the more important is for the horizontal integration, because it involves local government, involves people, because cities is for the people and people is for the cities.
So the UN Human Settlements Program was established more than 40 years ago.
Yeah.
How would you assess progress since then? Because we still see in many cities slums, we see bad infrastructure, we see crime issues. How is the UN helping those countries to alleviate that?
Yeah, UN Habitat been established more than 42 years ago. And I've been the Executive Director for UN Habitat for the past 1.5 years. And from my understanding, from my reading, that we work very closely with every levels. I think in a way looking into moving forward, it's not to say that there is no, there is no difference or no improvement. There is an improvement. There is an improvement looking into, there is an awareness to make our cities right. So it's the only thing is now I think we have to increase, to strengthen the awareness, to increase in terms of the delivery of the policies, and to implement the right policy at the right time. So this is very important, and you can see in terms of like in the African continent, in Asian continent, or in the European, and there are different types of challenges, and there are different types of ways that which can improve, and this need very important data, important tools, that which is the core business of the UN Habitat in terms of giving the normative and operational work on the ground. So I think that is we are moving in the right way, but my own assessment, not fast enough. Yes.
You know, you talk of sustainable and inclusive development.
Yes.
How do you achieve that without, or at least with, at the same time ensuring that the environment is protected?
I think now we have to look into development in a different way. We have to look into development not in fragmented. I think we used to see that development, economic development, social development, environmental development, psychological environment. I think now we have to look it into as one ecosystem. And we also have to, when you look into development, it's not only in terms of economics, but it's also sometimes people used to say that it's the economics being privatized, but the social part of it being compromised. So I think that we have to look into as one ecosystem in order for us to move forward, because otherwise it's no point saying that it's leaving no one and no space behind, because this is a very powerful statement. But I think that is we have to not only political will, but also I think in terms of the willingness for each one of us to change the way that we treat our what so-called development now, and what so-called economic growth now, because that's why now you can see that people are looking into the happiness index, not so much on GDP or JNP, is how happy people living in the cities. So I think this is now the movement. You can see that it's from the economic, social, psychological, and people now talking about mental health.
So another big international issue, of course, is climate change.
Yes.
How do you factor in the challenges that climate change will pose as you implement these plans for urban development?
And the way I look at the climate change, in order to change, we have to change the way that we live, the lifestyle, the culture that we are now. And when we talk about climate change, I think more important now is to come up with the adaptable solution, how we can adapt to the climate change. Of course, if we can prevent, that is okay, that is to us. But if we cannot prevent, then how adaptable are we in looking into this? Because I've been to Mozambique after the 1 month cyclone Idai. Yes, and I purposely went there for 1 month after that, because in the beginning it's all my colleagues from or UNHCR, OCHA, and all the World Food Program to go there. But as UN Habitat, I went there after 1 month. I realized that I met the president, I met the Minister of Education, and I remember the Minister of Education told me, Maimunah, Idi, can you build more resilient building, which is adaptable to our environment now? Because I asked her why. She said that if you go to the site, the building built by UN Habitat, using UN Habitat adaptable design, stand still. And at that time we funded by the World Bank, stand still, but the rest of the buildings surround that area was collapsed. So I think this is, can you scale up? This is coming out with the resilience. That's why one of our program is as how we can come up with the adaptable design, adaptable tools, adaptable policy to manage this climate action and climate change. I think that is my concern at the moment about the climate change.
Yeah, I want to turn to the experiences of some other countries. You were very fulsome in your praise of China's efforts to make cities more livable. You said, in fact, that China has integrated its policies and localized its urban agenda. In fact, you urged African countries to follow the example that China had set. Could you talk to us about that, and what is the UN doing to make that happen?
I make that statement because I had the opportunity to visit China recently, and then they gave me a briefing, and I've seen it myself. I went to the ground to have a look, and the way China looked at urbanization is that they look it in totality. That's why I mentioned that's not about the integrated and holistic. That they even look into from how they can put in the policy to plan and plan to action on the ground. So I think this is the one that I would like to see, because sometimes that we have a lot of strategic plan, but remain a plan and collect dust in the cupboard. But what I've seen personally when I went to China, saying that they said this is the plan. They showed to me the layout. This is how we implement it. This is what the impact that we have on the ground. So I think this is what we are looking for: plan, policy to plan to action, and we can calculate the impact. I think that is very good model of planning.
Madam Maimunah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here.
That's it for this special edition of The Heat from the United Nations in New York. I'm Anand Naidu. Thanks for watching. Hello everybody, I'm Anand Naidu. If you enjoy the thoughtful, engaged discussions you see on The Heat, you may also want to subscribe to our podcast. It's appropriately titled The Heat. Twice a week we take a deep dive on world headlines, talking to experts, journalists and others. It's a fresh, focused and intimate look at the issues that matter most. Whether it's the Hong Kong riots, the latest Middle East conflict or US politics, The Heat podcast gives the clear context needed to understand both what's going on and why. And what's best, we come to you. Whether you're at home or on the go, you can find The Heat podcast just about anywhere podcasts are found. Just search The Heat CGTN. Have a listen today and subscribe. Thanks.